today's video we're going to be talking about similar figures, but before we get to the vocab for similar figures, I do want to do a couple quick review questions on proportions. And so this very first proportion, remember that a proportion shows two ratios that are equal, or two fractions that are equal to one another. And when we have variables in our proportions, we can solve them using what we call cross products. So we can multiply across from one another here. 25 times k is 25k, and cross products are equal to one another, and so that's equal to 4 times 75, which I'll show my work here, and 4 times 75 is 300. And then I can solve for k because I know how to solve equations using inverse operations. The inverse of multiplying by 25 is dividing by 25. And if I do it on one side with the equal sign, then I have to do it on the other. So 300 divided by 25 is 12. And 25 divided by 25 is 1. 1 times k is k, so k equals 12. So if I plug 12 in over here, 12 over 4 reduces to 3, and 75 over 25 reduces to 3. So that answer checks and makes sense. We have another cross products review here. Again, we're just going to, 6 times x is 6x. That's equal to 24 times 19. 24 times 19 is 456. So 6x is equal to 456. Divide both sides by 6. And x is equal to 76. So this is just a quick review of cross products and proportions. We're also going to set up a proportion looking at word problems here. And this is just going to help us set the stage for these similar figures that we're going to remind ourselves of and learn about in just a little bit here. So this next one says, the park ranger stocks the children's fishing pond to keep a ratio of 4 sunfish to 3 perch. If he puts 300 sunfish into the pond, how many perch should be put into the pond? So we're going to write 4 sunfish over 3 perch equals 300 sunfish over, we don't know how many perch, so I'm going to put P. So remember that when we write our proportions, we always want to go in the same order, sunfish to perch, sunfish to perch. And then we can use cross products to solve. So 4 times P is 4P, and 3 times 300 is 900. The inverse of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4, and I have to do that on both sides of my equal sign. And 900 divided by 4 is equal to 225 perch, which makes sense and seems reasonable. If there's 300 sunfish, we're going to put in 225 perch. It should be smaller than the amount of sunfish we're putting in because there's 4 to 3 more sunfish than perch in our ratio. So the answer seems reasonable and makes sense. So again, this was just a quick review of proportions, how to set them up and how to solve them using cross products. That's going to help us as we move on to similar figures. Similar figures, I've written some definitions in here for you, are two shapes that have proportional corresponding sides and congruent angles. This should say congruent here. I'm going to add that word to this definition. Two shapes that have proportional corresponding sides and congruent angles. And when I say congruent, what I mean by that is having equal size and shape. So if shapes are congruent, they're the exact same size and the exact same shape. If angles are congruent, they're the exact same size, the exact same shape. And then corresponding sides are sides from two different shapes that are proportional to one another. There's that proportional word again. Maybe that's ringing a bell why we maybe reviewed proportions up here and cross products. And then corresponding angles are angles from two different shapes that have the same measure. These angles are what we call congruent angles. They are the exact same. Two C words we have to keep separate. Corresponding angles are angles that match. And corresponding angles are always congruent, which means they have the same measure. And so we're going to look at some examples of that in similar figures. So we're going to be looking at similar figures that have corresponding sides that are proportional and corresponding angles that are congruent, and we'll talk about what that looks like in our next video.